cape.
In our last video, we explored the expanded lore of the Fyreslayers, the consequences they felt after the great necroquake that rocked the realms. But this battle tome introduced more than just an extended timeline to their faction. It also took a few of the lodges from the Fyreslayer lore and explored them a bit. And I did note in my older videos my disappointment with the lodges. They each had about 3 to 4 sentences each at max. But the battle tome has corrected this and given us expanded lore for 2 of them and rules for 4. Starting off with a brief refresher, if you will, a Fyreslayer Lodge is the broadest organization they have. It's a group of Fyreslayer families, households, and leaders, all descended from common ancestors. It's a community. It can be very small or extremely massive. If you remember our earlier coverage, a lodge is a patriarchal system led by the Rune Father, with power often delegated down to his many Rune sons and their cadres. And in this way, power is passed down by lineage. New lodges are formed when a Rune son splits off, takes a few families with them, and they forge their own. This means that in theory, all lodges are connected by some sort of family tree, going all the way back to what are called the First Forge. These are the lodges that existed when Grimnir still walked among the realms. Now, to be clear, none of the original First Forged lodges still exist, but some claim to be direct descendants of them. In addition to ruling the lodge and creating heirs, a Rune Father must maintain and support a Zargrim priesthood, and in this way, their existence can continue, right? They hunt Urgold, they make runes, empower their warriors for the sake of going out and hunting more Urgold, and just keep that cycle going. And anytime we see one of these races or people groups are led by a central figure, it can take on the attributes of that leader. When you mix in things like martial pride, honor, a long memory, or religious quest, you can make some very distinct and flavorful variants all from the same common ancestry. The lodges, as they spread, they split, and they fought, changed and evolved over time. So now let's talk about the 4 lodges we get info about in the book. Now there are some that have a lot more lore than others. We'll just explore what's there. Starting off with the Evo Stark Lodge. This name is incredibly important. They're the only lodge to carry kind of a heraldry or a name from being one of the first forged, claiming to be direct descendants of those who walked alongside Grimnir. They are defined by such a long lineage and rich history, and as such, they are among one of the oldest lodges in Akshi. Their origins are traced to the location called the Voss Forge, the largest of the first forged magma holds, and the last to fall. It repelled every manner of chaos during the assaults that came at them during the actual Age of Chaos itself. They were a bulwark in an ocean of madness. Whatever the chaos gods threw at them, demons, mortal followers, combined efforts, things like that, the Voss Forge stood strong. But the magma hold was not to last, and it wasn't undone by an enemy, it was undone by greed and pride. See, after a particularly large Khorne assault, the Rune Father went out on his Magmadroth and actually killed a Bloodthirster. However, in the battle he was grievously wounded. That Rune Father passed away, but didn't choose an heir amongst his 12 sons. And if you know much about the lore of the Rune Sons from our previous videos, they are all desperately fighting to attain the honor of being the Rune Father, and so the minute there wasn't anyone chosen, they fell apart to infighting, each Rune Son fighting for total control. To avoid civil war, the Rune Master hatched a plan. He opened the Great Urgold Vault using the dead Rune Father's latchkey Grand Axe. He took all the Urgold that entire magma hold had been saving and he divided it up, along with many of the families and homesteads residing in there. And this one magma hold, Voss Forge, became 12 lodges, all going their separate ways, broken and scattered just as their god had been. Now only one of those sons, a dwarf named Zafor, took the mantle of the name Vostarg, and it's his lineage that the Vostarg Lodge comes from. And this has grown to become the largest of all Fyreslayer lodges, currently being led by the notable leader Baal Grimnir. Their aggression is legendary. Baal Grimnir is one of the most successful Lodge leaders. And when I say successful, this is measured by how much Urgold they bring in and how many sons they have. And in that regard, he is actually second in the entire Lodge's history in the amount of Urgold claimed, and he seeks to surpass his ancestors. We actually met this Lodge early in the Realmgate Wars. They're active. They're probably like the quintessential Fyreslayer Lodge. They do everything that you talk about in the lore, kind of like how Hammers of Sigmar are the best examples of Stormcast. Next up are the Grey-Feared Lodge, where the Evo Stark Lodge exemplify the honor of the Fyreslayers fighting for order. The Grey-Feared show its fierce darkness and utter dedication to Grimnir, and that goes down some pretty dark paths. They are bold, powerful, and always available for hire. See, the Grey-Feared are the most mercenary-like of all Fyreslayers. Their main fortress is called the Gates Wold, and this is a massive magma hold in Chamon, the Realm of Metal, which contains many realm gates inside of it. Super hidden, very secret place, but they have access to a lot of different areas. This means a few things. They can spread their armies just about anywhere. Now, when I say this is a massive lodge, I mean that it's so big it's able to produce several standing armies. At any one time, there can be upwards of 20 fighting elements across the different realms from the Grey-Feared Lodge. In addition to that, they have access to the most markets. You see, the way that they focus on obtaining Urgold is through mercenary work. They've all but given up on the idea of mining for it. So they need constant access to customers to make that commerce happen. And the book really emphasizes that Urgold is all that matters. Their prices to hire them as warriors are steep, but their results are definitive. They prove for themselves how effective these warriors are. And it also notes very plainly they have been on both sides of atrocities as defenders of people and also the bloody attackers. Their mission to reclaim Grimnir has evolved them to this point. They went down this darker path of get it at all costs, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to fight our way to reclaiming Grimnir. Many of their deeds aren't recorded by battlesmiths, which is kind of their thing. They kind of focus on heroic acts of singular individuals, but not the detailed lineage of like all the triumphs and the good things that we've done in our lodge's history. There's a real dark tone here that I love. They do what they have to do to achieve their goal. And I want to note that they still internally, amongst themselves, have a deep sense of honor, but from the outside perspective, it's a very, very dark tone of that same honor. They've foregone mining of Urgold almost altogether. They're mercenaries full-time, and only the rune masters and rune smiters really ever use the forges. The constant strain and exercise of war means that they actually have vast ranks of veterans. A lot of them know how to fight extremely well because that is just their lifestyle. No one's a miner, they're all warriors. And as like a personality temperament, like I said with the battlesmiths, they really revere their heroes and leadership. They will, like, even if they're being the bad guy, quote unquote, in this particular situation, they were hired by, say, an evil faction to destroy another, they will record the great battles and deeds of specific heroes and just kind of downplay the fact that they were partaking on the wrong side of a conflict. Now, there are two more factions that we have rules for, and their lore is really, really interesting, but it's certainly a lot smaller than the other two, but I wanted to cover them because if you are someone who bought this battle tome and you're looking to learn about the factions you can play as, they'd be really interesting to know. First up are the Hermdar. This is a very small and up-and-coming lodge that's gaining a lot of renown in Akshi, the Realm of Fire. They claim to be descended from one of the first founded, but they're a little bit vague on which one that is. The tale is that their ancestors lived in the magma forge known as the Caradrum, and they were really well fortified, but chaos, in the Age of Chaos, came and battered them away. That fortress was taken. They evacuated, they were left bereft, and without a ruling family, they elected their greatest Carl, meaning an average warrior who's just kind of a lieutenant, as their new rune father. His name, Hermdar Grimnir. Hermdar Grimnir led them in an oath to retake their home, which after a brutally and bloody campaign, they ultimately did. But when it was over, instead of going back to living in this massive fortification, he had it sealed up with magma. And they built a new home at the bottom of a mountain range called the Adamantium Chain. The idea here, is from what I assume, is that the deed was done. Their dead had been avenged, But they didn't want to be defined by them, so they had this new culture, new runefather, new lineage, and so they made a new home for themselves. In their new magma hold, they unlocked the secrets of blending fire steel. This is a method of forging where the blades never lose that heat of their first forging. When they're first cast and they're red hot from the fires, they don't lose that. It retains and exudes that kind of heat, which makes their most basic weapon extremely dangerous. As a temperament, they're a very small lodge. They take on a lot of oaths, probably more than they probably should, given their size, and they played a vital role in saving many tribes and other races from chaos armies during the Age of Chaos. They take what they can get in gold, but they'll actually protect innocent people for free if needed. If the Greyfeared are the dark side of the Fyreslayers, these are definitely like the extreme good end. They do all the stuff that Fyreslayers do. They hunt, they store gold, they have Zargrim priests, everything like that. But their conduct is just as important to them as their mission. I get the distinct sense that they ask themselves this question, like, what good is bringing Grimnir back if he despises you for how you did it? These are the morally good Hermdar. And the last of the lodges today are the Loafnir. Their defining feature, and what takes up the vast bulk of their lore, is that they have the highest number of Magmadroths. They boast more Magmadroth eggs in their vault than any other lodge, and their bond with them is so much stronger than others. This is because they venerate Volcatrix as well as Grimnir as their deities. They see the two as being absolutely inseparable, which, if you think about it, makes a certain kind of sense, right? Because their god is defined by his equal. They both exploded at the same time, equal powers, and now their destinies are forever intertwined. If you are one of these warriors, for your entire life, Grimnir is linked to Volcatrix. And it makes a great deal of sense that the mythos could evolve in this way. In addition to all of those things with the Magmadroth, their Zargrim priesthood shows an acute aptitude for using magmic invocations. There's a big emphasis on the religious aspect of the Fyreslayer life, both with the mythos development as well as the Zargrim priesthood. And they are easily recognized by their soot-stained hands and feet, and where their hands are blackened and it kind of fades back to the skin color mid-arm, and this appearance has its roots in a coming-of-age ritual for every single one of the warriors, where they have to grab a Magmadroth egg and walk it across a bridge. And this is kind of harkening back to when Grimnir's hands were scorched as he grabbed Volcatrix in their big epic fight, again tying the two things together. And honestly, that's all the lore that we have for the 4 playable lodges in the game. They did bring over those 3 to 4 sentence descriptions of many other lodges, and they're still in the book, but they haven't changed, so I'll leave those to the older videos I already did that covered them. So why are these things cool? Well, I really like the fact that they took an army with so few models in their range and really gave you a way to create flavor for them. You could go the poster boy route and play as the Volstarg. You can go the bad boy route and play as the Greyfeared. The Hermdar is like the paragons, the good guys, if you will. And the Loafnir kind of sit somewhere in between, but they have a defining feature of Magmadroths and magmic invocations and things like that. There's just a lot of ways to express the different aspects of a Fyreslayer life. Whatever you like about them, you can take that to infinity. The histories for all of them, I think they make a lot of sense when you think about how the lodges break apart and form new ones and multiply and spread. The Evo Stark Lodge history is really, really great, where the king dies without assigning an heir, and there's this almost civil war, but they survive by splitting up. The Greyfeared being the most mercenary types. I remember when this book first dropped, like the original Fyreslayers Battle Tome years ago, people were divided about the idea of a Duarden faction being more mercenary-like than just generally good. And if you want to play up that aspect, you can do that, or you can ignore it altogether by playing something else, taking rules from a different lodge. The Hermdar are fantastic because it's an example of, they got pushed back, knocked down a peg in a big way, rose back up, and then they just didn't want to be defined by their past, and so they sealed up their old magma hold and made a new life for themselves. And I kind of like that. I kind of respect that. I dig it. And the Loafnir is important because the Magmadroths are one of the coolest kits that GW's put out, and having a faction that's defined and really emphasizes those just sounds like a heck of a ton of fun. What I'd truly like to see is more books from Black Library that really emphasize the different lodges. So far, we've really seen the Vostok Lodge from the Realm Gate War series, but I would love to explore the others. I'd love to see more from Hermdar, Lofnir, and Greyfjord, because I think they all bring different aspects to stories. But this is always just the start of a conversation. I'd love to know which of these lodges is your favorite. And if there's one that stands out to you rules-wise, tell me that too. I love whatever interests people. Leave in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.